when George Tomek, rumor has it was with the Commodore Hull, doing river reinforce works in 1864. But I don't think that's true.
I represent that state.
I'm going to call Dave Genest up to the podium here. Dave, where are you? Where are you, Dave? There he is. Dave and I have talked over the years. He's been involved with the USS Monahan. The Monahan was one of the 3 destroyers that went down during Halsey's Typhoon. And we have 2 survivors of that evolution, Pat Doohan and Bill Crossman, right over here. And they'll be talking later. I can't see that far. Okay. This is Dave. He runs a website dedicated to Monahan, but he's been very involved in putting up information on the other ships that were lost during Typhoon Cobra. And he has put up on his website Archie DeRiker videos that the Navy produced when Archie passed away a couple of months ago, and has been interned with Rosecrans in San Diego. So I appreciate what he has done for the Operation Cobra survivors and the departed that we all pray for. Dave, do you want to say a word and then run your show?
Oh, okay. I'm not used to podiums, and they don't like me, and I don't like them. So if you don't mind, I'll come down here. I want you all to know it's taken me 67 years to be here. God bless you. Well, you'll find out in a minute. I want to get through that. I promise I'd make this short. It's a little hard when you love people like you. I think this guy named Doohan had something to do with it. Didn't you? Yeah. We're going to talk about you in a minute too. All right, I got to do double duty here, folks. I hope you don't mind, because I got to be careful I don't undo somebody else's stuff. Well, the intention was to start here. It's I'm one of these people that is a student of ironies and enigmas. They fascinate me. You're the Hulls. There are a lot of ironies amongst the Hulls. Well, I often joke sometimes about the guy who had 5 ex-wives because he thought he was a legend in his own mind, but let me tell you, there were 5 Hulls that were legends, and we honor them as we honor you tonight. Of the Hulls, those men and that might is what served us so well. I think if we could just get it to go forward once, see where I kind of go there. The 2 other ironies in this century is that DD-350 engaged the Japanese from Pearl Harbor to Guadalcanal and went to a watery grave. DD-945 engaged the Japanese and the Korean in joint operations in the Pacific, and not at the hand of God or a typhoon, went to serve in the same ocean, and not a watery grave, but to serve another mission. That's the ironies that I look at from time to time. She was a veteran, since most of you are from 945. She was a veteran of 25 combat operations in Vietnam, right? Great ship. You know, it's a real honor for me to be here today, simply because of this unusual connection. And you who served, those of you who knew the hell of war and knew the hell of bringing us back from the brink and keeping the peace in peacetime as well, know all too well that both man-made and nature's terror can wreak havoc on us all. I suppose I became aware of Commander Isaac Hull by living vicariously in his writings and the references that you find in Dury and his partners Halsey's Typhoon. And I had the great fortune to meet a number of survivors and adopt one as the son, or as the father I never had, Evan Fenn, who many of you may have seen on Oliver North's War Stories, when I helped them produce with Martin Fenton the story of Typhoon Cobra. That was probably one of the highlights of my life, to be able to put a survivor and his rescuer together, and you'll find that conversation in a conference call on our website. You know, on behalf of our volunteers around this nation, I came here to thank you for saluting tonight and this week Commander Hull. And I know I've got to finish up. There's a couple of things here that I'm going to blame this fellow on. If we can get to those pictures, you'll understand why. Huh? Okay. Okay. Well, we know about polywogs and we know about Neptune, but I just wanted to say, even though my father didn't come home, I have lived his life through many of your honors and the service you've had to our nation. God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America.
David, thank you very much. That is a perfect way.
How about the microphone?
Whoa! I do need to hear. Thank you. Will not be reflected on your fitness report, believe me. But that's a perfect way to dovetail into our next two guest speakers. And at this time, I would like to ask Pat Doohan and Bill Grossman if they'd like to come forward and say a few remarks. Pat, of course, is an old hand around here, and he was delighted to see a longtime shipmate that he hadn't seen for a long time, Bill Grossman. Crossman, that's it. I'm sorry. Thank you. Surface and come here and join us at the reunion. And I'd like to ask Pat and Bill to come forward and say a few remarks if they'd like to.
How about Bill?
I talked enough.
Oh, come on.
My name is Grossman. I've gone by Crossman all my
I
life.
know. You're gonna give me 20 lashes. You gonna put me on bread and water?
Well, that would have been Mark's.
I saw somebody go on bread and water once. It was not a pleasant sight. He thought he was going to get 20 lashes, but he didn't.
They don't do that anymore. Okay, thank you. Most of you guys have seen my hat. 350, old destroyer. We didn't know much about the modern Navy. Like 945? God, jeez. You want to listen to me anyhow? Yeah. Now, I'm not going to tell a story about ships and sailing ships and all of that, but I do want to share something with you. 1944, December 18th, a lot of guys had to do something that they didn't expect they would ever have to do in their lives. And we learned what miracles were. Miracles. Beautiful word. We learned. And it happened time after time after time. And believe it or not, we lived with them all our lives. We still would. But today, miracles, they were so great. Such a big part of our world. And, you know, I can't say any more than that. Thank you for listening to me. I appreciate you having me here because I've never, ever been to something like this before in my life. So thank you for sharing time and space. Thank you.
You're going to be with us the next time, too. We have this every 2 years. Bill, thank you very much. Pat, you sure? Okay.
Thank you.
Is this live?
Well, thanks for having us here. You know, us guys on the 350, we really welcome all of you.
Don't you gotta hold it?
We welcome all of you accepting us into your group. I think all of you heard my story, so I won't go into it again. However, I will like to share a few things of the old DD-350. As you know, we were commissioned in 1935. We were in Pearl Harbor, and I'll put into a few engagements that the ship went through. First we were at Pearl Harbor, then we were Bougainville, Samoa, Guadalcanal twice, Attu, Kiska, Wake Island, Macon, Kwajalein, and Uitok, Billy Atoll, submarine service at Woji, Hollandia, New Guinea, airstrike on Truk, Saipan, Marianas and Guam, and Tinian. So you could see we were a pretty busy ship. As of today, unless we get another member that comes out of the boat, the woodwork, like Bill did, that we haven't heard from, as of now, we have 10 Hull people around. And of those 10, did I lose so much stuff here? We have 10 total shipmates that we've been able to contact. I got on the phone a few days ago, and when I called, someone said, you know, he died 3 years ago, or he died a few months ago. Well, that was kind of a shock because I thought they'd answer the phone, but they didn't. Of the 10 we have, 7 of them are Pearl Harbor survivors.
4 of us are Typhoon survivors, and 1 of them survived both. That's John Valverde that lives at Petaluma. So you can see we still have a few people around, and you know, if we could keep getting the word out, maybe we could pick up another 1 or 2 around that has not heard of us before. So we would like to increase our numbers, but as we're getting old, as my wife says, you're not old, you just think you are. Well, sometimes I think I'm a little older than I am. So she said, you know, you're not 40. I said, you know, I get out of breath. She said, you're not 60. I said, I shouldn't be getting this tired. She said, well, you know, you turned 90 not very long ago. I said, well, that shouldn't make any difference. Well, she said, I did. So she sent my son with me this time over here. He's an ex-Seabee. I talked to her a while ago. She said, is he keeping you out of trouble, or are you keeping him out of trouble? Well, you know what the Seabees are. So I said, we're both being very good. Well, I thank you again for having us. We enjoyed it here. I'm in contact quite a bit with John and some of the other people. As time goes by, why, I hope we get more information. And again, thanks to all of you for welcoming us the way you do. By the way, talk about the Monahan. The one little thing I'd like to mention about the Monahan, you know, I floated for several days. I got picked up by the USS Brown. We drifted 70 miles during our little escapade out there. The Monahan survivors were picked up by the Brown 20 minutes after we were. The 6 fellows off the Monahan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pat. We appreciate it. A tradition that carries a lot around here as far as families are concerned. Bill Crossman's grandson is a Air Force lieutenant, and he brought him over for this meeting. We thank you very much for your service. You know, I was growing up in Chicago back in the 50s, and just starting out in high school, and one of my favorite programs was a program on every Sunday called Victory at Sea on NBC. And you know, I thought, my God, if I could only be, you know, in the Navy. Well, fate had it, I was in the Navy, and joining all of you tonight. That part of history meant so much to me because I basically barely remember the end of World War II. My dad took my mother and my sister and me downtown to the Loop, and it was like Times Square in New York. And I thought it was really a sight to see. That's always stuck with me. Our main speaker tonight is somebody who spoke to us a couple of years ago, and he joined the Navy in 1948. He got his commission in 1955. Jim Jeffers at various commands, and too many to mention. He also was an ASW trainer at San Diego, a subject near and dear to my heart because that was one of my specialties on the USS Hull when I was CIC officer. All in all, Jim retired in 1979 with 31 years of service. He's been very active in various posts for the Navy League here, and gave us a fascinating look a couple of years ago at the Navy of the future. But Jim's topic today is the Navy of the past. 1944, the Battle of Paragon Straits, October of 1944 as a matter of fact. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our main speaker, Jim Jeffers. Jim? Get that taken care of. Neil, he wants his presentation up there.
Where is it?
Good evening and welcome back to Las Vegas. Having spoken to you at your last two reunions here, it's a pleasure to be asked back again. The last man who spoke said he was in his 90s and he feels young. I'm only 81 and I am old. But being old, I remember a lot of things. And one of the things I remember is that we no longer have our next week will be the 68th anniversary of the Battle of Leyte Gulf, which is the greatest naval battle in history. It was the greatest by the number of ships involved, the dimensions of the battle zone, and the decisive effect of the battle. At the end, the Imperial Japanese Navy was no longer a threat. By October 1944, the Japanese knew they were in trouble. They had lost at Midway. They'd been forced out of the Solomons, the Gilberts, the Marshalls, the Carolines, the Marianas, and in the Battle of the Philippine Sea, they had lost nearly all their naval aircraft and naval aviators. The main battle fleet was stationed in Singapore and the Dutch East Indies so they could remain close to their only supply of oil. The carriers were in Japan for repair, remanning, and retraining. The Japanese knew they had to keep the sea lanes open between the Dutch East Indies and the home islands. Submarine activity had reduced the flow of oil, and if they lost the Philippines, they'd have no chance of getting oil back to their home island. And oil was important to the Japanese. If you'll recall, it was one of the primary reasons that they went to war to begin with. Anticipating an Allied attack in the Philippines, the Japanese developed a contingency plan, Shogo, or Victory. As soon as Leyte Gulf was identified as the landing site, naval forces from the Dutch East Indies, Formosa, and Japan all converged on the Philippines. This is the main battle group sortieing out of Borneo. This included the super battleships Yamato and Musashi, 3 other battleships, 12 cruisers, and 15 destroyers, an impressive force. But like most battle plans written by the Japanese, this was very complex and required almost split-second timing. Unfortunately, it was also conducted under complete radio silence, so no group knew what the other one was doing. And this would prove to be one of the failures of the plan. Can you see the cursor? Yeah. Under this plan, Admiral Ozawa would lure Halsey's 3rd Fleet away from San Bernardino Straits with a decoy force of all the remaining carriers, a couple of battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. Admiral Nishimura would transit Surigao Strait with a force of 2 battleships, a heavy cruiser, and 4 destroyers. Admiral Shima, coming down from Formosa, would follow Nishimura through the strait by about an hour with a force of 2 cruisers, 3 cruisers, and 4 destroyers. Admiral Kurita with the main battle force, represented by the yellow line, with the 2 super battleships and all the rest of that I showed you leaving Borneo, would transit San Bernardino Straits, and the plan was for Kurita's force and Nishimura's force to engage in a night action pincer movement at Leyte Gulf destroying all the landing craft. It was a great plan. Fortunately for us, it didn't work. Ozawa's decoy from the north was very successful. Halsey bit like a hungry fish, took the hook, left San Bernardino Street 8 unguarded without telling anyone else what he was doing. Unfortunately, Kurita had no knowledge that he had left. He still thought that he was going to be opposed by the 3rd Fleet battleships. Actually, the Battle of Leyte Gulf was 5 separate actions. Here, the submarine action off Palawan, where 2 American submarines discovered Kurita's main body, sank 2 heavy cruisers, including Kurita's flagship, and put 1 heavy cruiser out of commission. More importantly, they notified Halsey of Kurita's presence, and the next day, Halsey's aircraft met the fleet in the Sibuyan Sea and sank the super battleship Musashi after hitting her with at least 20 bombs and 19 torpedoes. Despite all that, it took 10 hours for that ship to sink. You can imagine what it would have taken to sink the whole fleet. The 3rd action was Surigao Strait, 3 o'clock in the morning on the 25th, and the final later in that morning, the battle off Samar, and at about the same time, the 3rd Fleet meeting Ozawa's decoy force in the battle off Cape Engano. Tonight I'm going to concentrate on the Battle of Surigao Strait. The Japanese plan started falling apart almost immediately. I told you the submarines encountered Kurita's force and notified Halsey of their position. Between the loss of his flagship, Kurita spent 2.5 hours in the water before he was picked up by a destroyer. And then during the Battle of the Sibuyan Sea, to get away from Halsey's aircraft, they turned and made a run like they were going to Manila. That all slowed him down, so there was no way he could get to Leyte Gulf for a night action. Nishimura's force entering the Sulu Sea on the October 24th was discovered by 7th Fleet patrol aircraft, and the notice went out to Commander 7th Fleet. Shima, who was following Nishimura, wasn't spotted at all. But on the basis of the news of the Southern Force, Admiral Oldendorf was ordered to set up a block of Surigao Strait with 6 battleships, 8 cruisers, 28 destroyers, and 39 PT boats. But actually, I'm a little ahead of my story right now. To really understand my slant